That is a good song.
High school.
It's a great song.
But no, the journey began back in 2019 with the mission to really bring awareness to what we have in common. You know, I think it's important. I grew up in a small town not too far from here, Plattsburgh. So, you want to say that?
Well, I grew up in Plattsburgh, New York.
Oh, you know what? I have a pen pal.
Uh-huh.
When I was in 6th grade from Plattsburgh, New York.
There you
We
go.
had pen pals.
There you go.
So, so we began that journey. We really wanted to focus on youth development. But as we grew further into our mission, we thought it'd be more important to bring community into the conversation, because I think POAC, in one word, I always say it represents community. People of all colors, backgrounds, socioeconomics,
Right.
all of that represents what community should look like or feel like, right?
Exactly.
So, my partner here, sidekick,
Yeah,
co-pilot,
yeah,
she started this out with me. I'll let her introduce herself.
yeah, Lexi Rodriguez, president of POAC. I kicked this journey off with Jamie in 2019, and he told me about this. We were both working together in the financial industry, and I just kind of knew I always wanted to give back to community. And when he told me about this vision, I was like, let me help you stand it up. So I was an accountant for 10 years, and I said, let me help you run your books and let me help you figure this out. So we've been doing it ever since.
And then our next partner here.
I am Marissa Grayson. This is actually my first full year with the team. I'm our program facilitator here at POAC Succeed. And as well, I was in banking before, and obviously you get the last name. I am Jamie's niece.
Yes.
So
I
that is.
got that on one of the.
Okay, yeah, so I'm gonna say, so there's just a lot of kind of fire pit conversation around POAC and the why and what it means to not only ourselves, but our family and us as people. Both of my parents were teachers, so it's a little bit of a hits home for me to talk to students about
Right.
real things, other real things, that they are true experiences that they have, and that's why I'm here.
And last but not least, our newest team.
Yes, I'm 1 month into POAC Succeed, so I was principal in Smithville for 6 years at the high school, 7 at the elementary, and then a teacher there. So the reason, so I hired them first at the high school to come in. We were having some issues with really unkind behavior, to the point where I had so many discipline issues in 1 quarter that I normally would have over a year. And of course, that was after COVID, and everybody just felt like they could say whatever they wanted. And so I just knew it was bigger than me. So reached out to him, not really even understanding what POAC is about. So we've partnered together in the school for 3 years and done some levels of POAC, and we've gotten, God, what is the total number of students who?
Now it's well over probably
Yeah.
Over 500.
600 by now.
And then our staff, and so what it has really done for me, I just embraced it, and it has helped me lead differently and not be afraid to. I think the biggest fear is when somebody is being unkind or saying something, even if it's, if you go, that's gay, helping people understand how that impacts people. And so I just sat in all the sessions, because of course our community wasn't fully embracing it, because they thought it was something it's not. And so they had to meet with community and kind of share what this is about before we went into the schools. And I put out a lot of communication, and then we slowly filtered into the middle school, and then this last year into the elementary. So yeah, it's worked really well. It's changed a lot for the better. And I always have to preface this. I had a suicide every year at the high school except last year.
Wow.
But I also was hearing kids begin to use this language and be able to stand up for other kids. So that's my long-winded answer. Who I am.
So the ultimate goal is to, Dr. Blatt said it best, is to provide the vocabulary. When people don't know what to say,
Right.
most people say nothing. Right?
Yeah.
It's okay to.
Well, I don't have a problem. So I didn't have a problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I do.
Yeah.
you can do surveys, even in our surveys,
Yeah.
well, to your point, everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe for you.
Right.
How about your neighbor?
Yeah.
How about the kiddo that's?
I had a conversation with one of my friends and, talking about this survey and he said, well, we don't have a problem. I'm like, do you see me sitting here? And they went, yeah. I said, I have a problem. Do you know me? Am I your friend? Yeah.
It takes one.
So I'm gonna give you something. And I hope you got some extras, because if you don't, we should start carrying them. So what you just said is a premise to what we encourage. So that basically said more than 90%.
Right.
So when we meet with students, staff, community members,
Mhm.
I think it's important for people to know you're 90% because they did not realize you may have a problem.
Yeah.
But through conversation, you can get beneath the surface, understanding, oh, we actually have the same problem. We just didn't realize it
Right.
because we're not talking to each other. So our goal is to really soften, humanize the conversation.
Right.
Just like I always like to use backyard fire pit conversations, like, because I really enjoy that. The conversation flows naturally. And so with our session, that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Is just let the conversation flow. It's okay not to know. Just ask.
Right.
And so that's really how we dive into what we do. And that's kind of our goal for working with the community of Kearney, is to allow this to be a platform for all people to come in and share their experiences. But once I understand your experience and you understand mine, maybe then we can start building things forward together.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that you've gone through the school, because in my mind, the issues that I'm having as an adult, it's very hard to reach out to the adults that are doing it. Right? So you got to start somewhere. And a lot of this behavior that is, I'm trying to find the right word, hateful, starts from the adult, it filters down to the children.
Yeah.
And that's, how do you fix the adults? And that's my question. How do you do that?
I think it starts with being intentional with connection, right? And I think it's getting people to realize, one, connection's not bad. And to open yourself up to hearing people's stories. And when you can make a connection with someone who's had not a great experience here, then you put a face to that story, and then you can realize, yeah, okay, maybe there's things that we do need to work through. And we can with a plan that we work together. But I think what happens is we all isolate ourselves so much that we don't build that connection within our community to make it better.
Yeah.
And I use the word legacy a lot, because to me, we're all going to leave this earth one day. But what are we doing while we're here? What are we really trying to be remembered for? You're going to be remembered one way or the other.
Right.
Right. Well, and you may not tell your story, but someone's going to tell your story one way or the other. No different than mine. But I think by what Lexi said, being intentional about the why we show up, even if it's uncomfortable.
Right.
Even if it's one person out of a city of 10,000, we still show up and do it. Because to me, this is more valuable even than a room full, because you now have the platform to learn and to be heard.
Right.
So
Yeah.
how long have you lived in the community?
I've lived here 27 years.
Okay.
I do live outside city limits, but my kids have gone through Kearney School, but I've been here a long time, so I know a lot of people around here.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, growing up in the neighboring town,
Yeah.
every community has challenges.
Mhm.
Now, I can vouch and say, Kearney has a lot of shining stars that we get to work with and
Right.
students, as students. And the students that we work with as young as 5th grade on through the high school ranks,
Right.
I wish the community members could hear what we hear,
Yeah.
because there are some leaders ready to go
Yes.
and change the narrative, because right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just like in anything in life. You can paint a broad brush around how you want to be defined as Kearney,
Right.
but it's not a true depiction of everybody who's in Kearney.
Yeah.
And we know that.
Right.
So, you all know that, but are you okay with the narrative? And if not, this is one way we can change it. Basing the music up front, having conversations, and it will slowly change. It's not going to change overnight.
No.
It's a long history,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I know it, you all know it, but I think one thing I applaud the city of Kearney is that you're taking the initiative to do something.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of people, and it's funny because I still subscribe to the Courier Tribune, and I have for many, many years. I've always, that, I mean, how many pages is it now? About 4? That's how I heard about y'all. And it just happened to be the same time where something was going on in the community, adult wise, not student wise. And I went, wow, this, who thought to start this? How did this get going? I don't see it really changing much. I'm sorry to say that. But at least there's conversation about it. Because I mean, I sat there and I went, it just, everything's falling into place. It's like somebody wants to hear that there are problems here, and that need to be with a lot of how addressed. But again, you're talking. I think there was somebody, I don't remember the person's name, Joanne.
She was at the last community meeting.
Yeah.
And she said something about the old guard. And I went, yeah. And I've lived here 28 years, 27, almost 28 years. And my husband did KHRA, got to know a lot of the community. I remember the first time we went for a board of Ireland. We moved from Massachusetts out here. Sorry. But we moved out here and we loved it here. Actually, we moved away for 18 months while I was on contract. And we moved back. I could have moved anywhere in this USA. And I wanted to come back here. Because I loved it. My kids loved it. Everybody loved it. I love the community. So that speaks highly of Kearney.
Yeah.
But now I've been here and I'm interacting more and doing more. And now, I don't know, I've seen some ugly things. Like,
Well, I mean, we talk about, and Tracy hit on it a while ago, 2 islands, their intent and impact.
yeah,
I think there are people in the community, young and old, their intentions are sometimes to get a laugh for whatever, right?
yeah,
But the impact they don't realize is 20 years later, you done scarred somebody to the core, and you don't even realize what you just did. One of the things that, when you have grandchildren, it's raising your own kids is one thing. When you have grandchildren and your grandson or daughter comes home and said, this is happening to me at school.
right,
Grandma and grandpa all of a sudden has a different antenna that raises up.
yeah,
Because now you're in protection mode. So I always talk about when it's not your reality, it's like you said earlier, I don't see nothing wrong. But when it becomes a reality,
yeah,
it's a game changer. Now it's different. Now you got my attention. So you can turn a blind eye to things. We teach our students in our programs the difference of being an upstander versus a bystander.
right,
And you said something earlier, I'll allude to what you said, is that we realize you're not going to change a lot of mindsets overnight. But if we change one mindset to think differently, we did our job. Our mission is fulfilled. Because ultimately, hearts and mindsets are what we're trying to get people to realize that we all are human beings.
Yeah.
You have a 4-year-old daughter, you want your daughter to be safe just like anyone else wants their kid to be safe.
right,
But in order to be safe, we have to understand, how do we accept each other? How do you know you're 90% when all of a sudden we've been neighbors that didn't even know you had a problem?
exactly.
So
Yeah, and I think that's what happened in the situation with me is all of a sudden, these people that know me realize, wait a minute, we actually just hurt her when they, when it was there. Yeah. When you're hurting, when you do these things, so why do them?
So I think if you can plant those seeds in students about intent, because here's the thing, adults, you know better.
Yeah.
You know better, right? That's what we talked about. My end was clear. Is that you know better you need.
Yeah.
But students will also, until, for instance, I always talk about if a student does something because their friends are doing it, but they don't even realize what they're doing is even wrong,
Yeah.
because it was kind of just not right. But when that student now all of a sudden realizes your intention is actually in hurt, the impact of this other student, now it's that student's responsibility to act different.
Well, when you start talking to the kids that were just following, they will say, yeah, I didn't have a good feeling, but they just don't have the confidence or the tools to stand up to their own friend. And that's what we see a lot of, and even kids asking, well, how do I deal with my mom who's making fun of, somebody
Yeah,
from another
exactly,
race?
yeah, because they don't have the same
Yeah.
feeling that.
Yeah, but it's a start, and I feel like it's just, again, Smithville's had them for 3 years, this will be their 4th year, and now kids are wanting to lead things. They keep saying, this is great, this needs to happen. But it's helping adults understand that we're not forcing your kids to, like transgender issues. That's what everybody's afraid of. Like, you're forcing them to do something that's either against my religious beliefs or whatever. This is just about, it helped me even with language when a parent would call, and parents also feel like they can say anything, would call and just say the most awful things about another student. And then I could use the language of POAC. Well, that's a human being.
Yeah.
We're a public institute. We educate all kids. And if you knew that student's 90%, you would not feel that way. You would not say those things. And once you can get them to understand it's a human, it's hard to argue. It's hard to keep going.
Right.
But even just last night, I had some ladies with me over, and they were talking about some kids in Smithville are doing the Confederate flag with the American flag. And they were talking about, we were having this discussion. So much comes from, and I don't think the kids even really understand the history of things. And so then you get into these really uncomfortable topics. And one mom was going, well, I think it's everybody's right to do what they want. And I said, yeah, but if I'm their parent and I know that is offending one person,
Right.
just one, I'm going to help them understand why that's hurtful. Just like you, they may not realize it's hurtful. I think they do it a lot of times too, to, as a show and as a statement piece, and
Exactly.
you know what I mean? And so we just need to help them understand the impact that it's having on some people, because you can't argue with, nobody has that in them where they intentionally want to hurt someone.
Right.
There is good in all of us. We just have to help them find it, and then really give them the tools and strategies so they can stand up to people.
Yeah, and I would add to, I think the beauty of what we can also do is it's okay to agree to disagree.
Yes.
But let's have time to do it, respect. One of the things that we've learned through this community as well as others is some of your own students are going through debate class. And we hear them in our sessions that we, work with your students, and it's like, man, they get it, because they can state their opinion.
Right.
They can actually listen and then rebut versus just speak over one another. And so they're learning how to have a dialogue around things that they may not agree, but they walk out with a different understanding of your perspective versus Lexi's perspective.
Right.
And then even that they may not be in an agreement, they walk out still with mutual respect.
Right. Yeah.
And I think in the community, if we can do more of that, no one's trying to change no one's mindset. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with being kind.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with accepting.
Exactly.
Not everybody's a Chiefs fan in Kearney. You might be a Patriots fan coming from the North.
Trying to cheat, baby.
Start out. I wish the community could realize kind of what and how we do, because
Right. Yeah.
we can talk about all day. Has nothing to do with black or white. It's the fact that I love to go out there. I'm not the best actor, but live to it and not call me yet. I'll tell you that I'm always dressed for a team set.
Yeah.
But if we can teach students, well, even adults, there's way more that we all have in common
Oh, yeah.
that we wouldn't realize.
Exactly.
We do an activity with the students called What I Wish You Knew About. And it's been one of the most eye-opening activities, because we've seen star quarterback, and we've seen the student that's trying to find their pocket or group where they.
Yeah.
And when they do this activity, they share some things that are beneath the surface, learning the 90% that,
Yeah.
I stress, I have anxiety, every Friday night, maybe the game, all pressure's on me. I don't handle pressure. Well, that might be someone's state.
Right.
Whereas someone else may have that same exact feeling. And when these are read from our team out loud, their names aren't on it, but they're hearing it. They're like, show up for each other differently, because now all of a sudden this person doesn't feel like they're on an island by themselves. We all sometimes feel like, man, I'm alone thoughts.
Yeah.
When you realize you got an army, a village of people who can probably show up for each other from a support standpoint.
Exactly.
I think growing up in a small town myself, one thing I like about my upbringing was I got a sense of what community was in Plattsburgh. We had Black, we had white, there's only 1,500 people, maybe 2,500, counting the cows.
Yeah.
They taught us how we showed up for each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was embedded into me as a youngster to do what
Yeah.
our families have done all since you been
Absolutely.
brought into this world, and now carrying the torch forward too. But I think if we can get back to that, things can't be different,
Absolutely.
and I guarantee you,
To get back to them, really,
Yeah.
but there's only a few people that have courage to take this step to try to get back. I've always been in the game. I come from a family that's huge in athletics,
Yeah.
starting from her dad, my older brother, to my youngest brother, and now our kids. We've always been in the game. Polack is an opportunity to get others who have
Right.
the game. This is the way to get back into the game. Whether it's golf, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, soccer.
Yeah.
This is our arena to bring people off the bench and get them back into the playing field. And versus, even with you coming out tonight, I applaud that. It means, like I said earlier, it means a lot that you took the time just to come in and learn.
Yeah, I definitely want to know
Yeah.
what I can do to help. Because my thing, I grew up, don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution. So I had something affect me, and is there something I can do to help make things better? Because like I said, I mean, in the golf thing, the community, my husband passed away 1.5 years ago, and the ladies that I golfed with were my support. I mean, I did the whole thing, go to talk to somebody else. I got more support from those women. And not everybody was right about what thing, but to hear their perspective on where to go and how to deal with things, and they were there for me. More than going to take somebody. And it was good.
So, being in this community for 27 years, almost 28 years, and this question was for, this group here is, what does success look like as far as moving the community forward? I understand the big picture is that people's mindsets are here, but if you're going to stay in this community, what's a success?
What can we do to, I was just watching the news before I came here, and they had a story about Chicago. And once a year, they have this big, everybody jump into the lake thing, and it's been growing and growing, and everybody comes, doesn't care who you are, where you're from, whatever, just everybody just go out and have a good time. I don't know, but I know Jesse James is very big here. We used to do competition up there, barbecue and all that. Getting more people involved in that, and find something that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, because there's not a lot of people that can afford the, entry fees to get into the whatever. But to make something to bring people together that is affordable and fun and inclusive. Absolutely. And I love the new water park that's out there. My daughter's in a wheelchair. So she was 16 when she got injured, and and she's 28 now, she lives in Germany and playing wheelchair basketball and all kinds of stuff, and just living her life. And to have something like that in Kearney now is great, because that's inclusive. Right? Kids in wheelchairs can go there and all. When she was injured back in 2012, she had a hard time opening up the door to get into the high school.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And those are some things that we talk about during our session, is that, we talk about session 1, the dangers of labels.
Yeah.
Session 2, blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
Blind spot maybe is that the fact that you have your daughter who's in a wheelchair, but you don't schedule a meeting on the 3rd floor,
Yeah.
and there's no way for her
No,
to get up.
Yeah,
And
well,
that's the blind spot.
don't tell her that.
We all have blind spots, right? But it's just taking time to recognize who's not in your hub, who's not in this group, who in this, even if it's your golf group, you know, if it's the same women, who can you invite just to say, hey,
Oh, exactly.
you know, there's intentional opportunities every single day.
Yeah,
Hold the door open for somebody, or whatever that may be. So.
just talking to them. People don't do that much. Everybody's. Yeah.
Yes.
That's to me, you spark a conversation with somebody, you can learn a lot about.
And I think you said it earlier, it's about the stories. We all have a story, you know, and, you know, I think it's just, we don't tell our stories enough. And I think the platform that, you know, POAC's provided for communities and students, teachers, is that I want to hear, actually, we want to hear your story. Because that's where change occurs too, is then you realize these stories start to align with one another. And it's like, wow, I didn't know that about you, or I didn't learn that about you. Now, every time you see me, we can actually show up differently. Because if I'm at a golf tournament or if a golf course and I see you,
Exactly.
yes, I'm you. But it starts another dialogue about the stories of how we met. So, how does success look like for you guys? Well, I mean, how long have you been?
15 years.
15 years. And so you went to high school here too?
No, I went to high school in Hutchinson, Kansas.
Hutch, okay. Okay. And you have a 4-year-old, so I mean, past the vision out as to when she's now 14, going through high school. What do you want to make that feel like?
I want her to feel like she can be whoever she is. And doesn't necessarily have to do anything or be anyone to get love. And I know that she doesn't have to do anything or be anyone in specific to get love and support.
Yeah. You had 4 children come through here, well, maybe not through this school district, right?
Yep.
They did.
4 of them.
So, understanding your position and what you do for the city, I mean, what would success look like from your eyes? As far as just, if X can happen, this will what Y will look like. What do you think?
Goodness, I have different answers depending on which role I'm in, like as a mom,
How about a
like,
humanitarian role?
you know, but well. As somebody that is trying to build a community and a thriving, successful community for this city. And probably a little bit for my kids, right? Like, I want them to be able to be aware and acknowledge, like not be afraid and not have fear when they realize that they do have a preconceived notion or see somebody different from them. So like my experience with my kids is, and through the school district, we are so afraid of admitting when something comes into our head, we think it's wrong instead of like, it's human. It's human that you can see somebody with blue eyes and be like, oh, look, they have blue eyes. That's different than my brown eyes. Like, that's not bad. But if you see somebody that has a different color skin, you've been told by society that that's bad. And that makes it so that people can't be aware and have conversations.
Yeah.
So for me, I want it to be a safe place where people don't have to be ashamed of the thoughts that are coming into their heads so that it can be acknowledged and it can be brought to the forefront so that we can talk about it. Right?
You know, I love the fact that you use the analogy of blue eyes and then the dark skin being viewed this way, because it's the same way with your community of Kearney. You know, we ask someone, hey, where are you from? Kearney, Missouri. There's a pause with what's said next because of maybe what they've heard of Kearney, the historics of Kearney, and it's not a true depiction of everyone from Kearney. So people with brown skin is not scary. But if you've been told that they are scary, then guess what? That's their, if I've been told that Kearney is feeling the way, then that's mine. So it's just through this conversation, you realize that I'm human, don't look alike. We can have a conversation. We're in the city of Kearney, of which I've known the history of Kearney from growing up not too far from here, but I'm still here showing up in Kearney, trying to be a part of a solution.
And it's interesting, so. You know, I've been here for 22 years now, and when I started working for the city, I heard different stories than I ever knew. So you lived here in this community for a really long time, and you don't necessarily experience, so not everyone that lives here in this community sees, and I'm not gonna call it ugliness, I'm gonna call it fear. Like, it's people that are afraid, people that have been wounded, people that have learned that in a lot of cases that they are objects and that they are being used, and then they think that it's okay to use or treat other people because they haven't been treated well themselves. Like, I would like to take the shame away from it and that stigma, acknowledge the fear, and so that everybody should like embrace it.
Yeah, difference is so fair.
Yeah.
But there was a survey question that we were actually going to talk about tonight. It says, what would the experience of being a new resident of Kearney be? What would the experience of being a new resident of Kearney be different based on a person's sexual orientation, race, or socioeconomic status? 43% said yes, 35% said no, and 22% said neutral. So to what you're saying, Sheila, I feel like, how do we get to the neutral being 100%? It may be, it may not be, but you have to acknowledge the difference. You have to acknowledge that someone for 22 years can be in the same town and never have any unique experiences versus somebody who's been here for 2 days. So, and how do we get to that? You know, what steps do we take to where everyone is acknowledging the differences that someone may go through, and how can we build on that?
And it takes time for those things, because I'm thinking through in Smithville, because we're very similar to Kearney with similar issues. And even with one of my very best teachers, who is very well respected, made a comment towards a student that was just shocking. And I took him through an activity that was enough to help him recognize, well, maybe I do. Maybe I have a bias about kids who don't like math and don't look like me. But it took me, it was a constant conversation of, well, is it possible? And there's strategies for this, but then people start to talk about that experience. Like, well, we all have a belief system. I mean, I was raised in Houston, Texas. So I made a comment that we used to say all the time, and it was cotton picking. Okay, and I said that in front of my behavior interventionist, who happens to be Black, and he was like, Tracy, you cannot say that. I said, say what? I didn't even realize I had said it. But thank God for him. Number one, not feeling like it was a personal attack towards him. He was able to, and so I share that because even us who have a passion for this, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's scary sometimes when you get into discussions and you're trying to help somebody on how to navigate through that with someone. But I can say it changed me as a person being with COAC, because now I have the language. And if anything, I can say, even when I was talking to him, I said, I'm so sorry. I had just been with my dad, had been in town, and I'm sure he said it, because then I start saying y'all again. It's just like, when you're around your family, those things start coming up again. So it just made me more aware that what else am I doing that maybe people don't even share with me because they're not comfortable. So it's just being able to admit we're all going to screw up and we still have to accept each other.
Oh, yeah.
So,
my daughter corrected me. GPS, yelling at me, and I'm like, stupid GPS Nazi. Mom. Yeah.
But that's that's not quick. Sometimes we have all for something just to roll off the tongue.
Exactly.
Right, so amazing. But that could be a really opportunity with you and your daughter, and if your daughter corrected you. And that conversation is there, because the thing is that don't shut your kid down, they bring it to your attention.
Yeah.
Use it as a learning opportunity of
Yeah.
growth. You know, through our program, we talk the difference of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And there's levels in between. And no one's gonna go straight from a fixed rate to growth. You know, there's a process that you go through in order to get to that growth mindset, you know, and you gotta be willing to, you know, and when you've been conditioned for 47 years, this is my community, this is how it's been. No one's changing my way of thought. That's fine. But you're not gonna grow either.
Yeah.
I mean, so you stay that way, but go back to your legacy.
A lot of people think that they're just fine and they have no growth.
Yeah.
Like they arrive.
This is just the way it's.
And parenting helps with that, I think.
Yeah.
I could speak to this coming from a small town.
Yeah.
Playing sports in a small town. I have the privilege to play on the next level in the curriculum level. A lot of people can be a big fish in a small town. They're comfortable with that. But they won't take the next level outside of that town to where they're not in competition that are equally as good as you to compete at the next level. And I think not everyone has that fight to get to that next level. So they'll stay here in their age 50 and they're still thinking like they were at age 18. Doing the same thing on Friday night when they was traveling.
Exactly.
It's like,
And I think a lot of that's the case.
that's the case.
That's the way it is. And it's just you put your shoes on, same things.
Yeah, you know, I think college was the best example for me is because it birthed me out of a small town community. And I played ball with guys from big cities, whether it be California, Florida, Texas, all those in between. And I learned, and actually was a catalyst of change me and my twin brother, because a lot of guys from Texas, or say California, they didn't have a lot of white teammates. People from Biloxi, Mississippi on my team. They didn't have a white team. It's almost like the Titans all over again.
Yeah.
But having the small town experience, our coaches leader, my twin brother, how do you bring this world together? So we were thrust into a leadership role sooner than we asked to be. But we were conditioned and ready to take that on because that was just our reality growing up. And I think even with our logo, it's almost a representation of a hub. Like the football, you stand in the hub, you call it, but the people that are within the hub, backgrounds, experiences that came together to move the ball forward on its side.
And what opened my eyes from when I was a kid growing up and all that was going into the military. And you're in basic training, I'm looking around going, I have never been around these people, you know, and I say these people, I'm everybody. And I'm a woman and I'm with a lot of guys too, you know. But I learned and I learned fast, just be you, be honest, be kind.
Yeah.
Stuff happens.
But they have their back and you have their
Oh,
back.
absolutely, absolutely. But every once in a while, you have to learn, you know, I call them snakes in the grass.
That's right. Sure. You know, everyone should like you that. You know, you knew about us, you saw us online, you kind of knew what this was all about.
I'm just trying to figure out what we can do to change the mindsets out there, or not even change it, but just say, just be kind, be nice to people. And don't just let people live their lives.
Right.
One of the things I brought up to Adam, because I talked to him, and there was just what happened to me really bothered me. But and it happened to be LGBTQ support. And I'm a big PBS person. I watch PBS. I subscribe to PBS just like my newspaper. I'm always gonna have a PBS. My kids were on Sesame Street when it was on Sesame Street. They just, and it was really upset with them because they had this program. I got an email from them. And it's all the new programs coming out. And they had one, it was called Mama Bear. And I'm like, oh my God. And it, just the same time where the thing in the paper came out, and then this on PBS. And then I went through because they send me this thing every month about all their different programs. There was no mention of this program in that, but it was an email I got from one of their people that promote some of their shows. And it's called Mama Bear. And I told them about it. I said, I watched that thing and I was just like, oh my God. It's unbelievable. So if you ever have the opportunity to watch, it's like 45 minutes long, something called Mama Bear, and I'm sure you all heard about some of the Mama Bear stuff going on with all the politics. Well, this has nothing to do with that. It's something completely different. And I watched that program and I was just like, wow, everybody needs to see this, regardless of who you are. We need to watch this to see what some of these people are going through. Because you don't see it. You're sitting in your house, you're going to do your job, come home, have your dinner, get up the next day, do the same thing all over again. Yeah, you know, it's just
Even to that, we spoke at a coaches summit a couple of years, and I talked to the coaches about a lot of these coaches coach student athletes. Not like your community because there's not a lot of diversity here, but there's others that have some. That's a lot of coaches go into the 3-car garage, you know,
Yeah.
practices over. These kids are going into the cars and going to a different environment. But my challenge to the coaches were, it's more than the X's and O's. You know, if you've done your job as a coach, they're going to know X's and O's. But when it comes to, you don't know if a student athlete has food to go home to, a safe environment to go home to. You can't just care about running touchdowns, catch a touchdown. You know, that's the reason why the mental health crisis is on a spiking rise, to where you have student athletes committing suicide because of the pressures of home life,
Yeah.
activities and sports, and having to be something that they may not even be conditioned to be. So how do you show up as a coach? Because I think the impact on the coaches as a former college athlete is that you also have control of your life. There's things that can be done as guys or even girls, but you as the coach are still the face of that program.
Right. Yeah.
You think you're sweat, it doesn't matter. So they don't get a pass. And I wish I had the opportunity to say that for other coaches. And I hope they're listening and streaming on the same, because to me, they have the opportunity to condition young men and women as early as middle school and through a high school on what a good teammate looks like. What actually, you're asking the student athletes to be leaders, and they may not even know what a leader is. So be the example of what that is. Take a step forward and have this community form when everyone else is taking a step back. Because that one, at some point in time, you might actually have to take a step forward for your teammate or student athlete coach.
Exactly.
You can't just always turn your back. So,
Exactly.
what else?
Well, I was also gonna ask, do we have anybody online asking anything, saying anything?
We have 3 viewers. You won't say anything. No.
Ask them what they would like to.
Guys, if you can hear us, we will do it.
Yeah, I think our biggest thing for this is wanting to connect people. So, you can hear those stories. I feel like the best thing anyone can do, especially in a community like this where, there is less diversity, but there's not. There are people of different backgrounds that want to connect, right? They want their story to be heard. And if you look in your own circle of friends, and if they're all similar to you, you need to find some new friends and branch out, right? I think that's the best way to get a feel for your community and what it really is, right? Find someone that's completely different than you and hear their story and their experience. To your point, in the neighborhood that I live in, one of my neighbors is LGBTQ and she is about to have a baby with her wife, and her story and how do you even how she conceived and she had to go out of state and it was just,
Right.
you know, those are things that you don't have to think about, barriers, it's not, you know. And, you know, that's something that I never had experience and, you know, honestly, I'm very fortunate that I have that kind of diversity just right in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I get a, in my little cul-de-sac, drink my glass of wine and just have conversations, but that's when you get to realize, you know, just the struggles of people and having that empathy. And that's what this is here for, right? For people to come and share and for us to help build on that and how we can make this better.
I was gonna say, you keep asking how we change, and I think just showing up, you know, again, Jamie said it earlier, I applaud you for being these other communities. That showed up tonight, because this is where we have to get to have the conversations, you know, you can always have these conversations with, it's hard to have them with even your friends, but I think next time invite them, your golf group.
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
Well, there's some that are out of town, but there are others that just, you know.
Yeah. And if not, then take the conversation to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, just.
They're solved on the 18th.
Going back to data always tells the story too, and although there's not a whole lot to this survey because not a lot of people took it, it still provides some data. I mean, even looking at this question, do you feel schools and community members are willing to work together to ensure a healthy community? 42% are neutral. So that shows, and then 31% say, well, yeah, of course, but then you've got 12%, almost 13 that disagree that they would.
Yeah.
So, and you know, I just want you guys to know, because I've been in Smithville for 20 years, that it's the same there. The school and the community aren't really communicating very well. You know, there's always going to be discord. However, just being upfront about what we all want the same thing. We all want kindness and belonging, and we want the best for our kids, and we want everybody to have a good experience.
Yeah.
And so
live their lives.
Yeah.
That's the key right there.
So maybe it's just that one ultimate goal is we all really do want the same thing.
Don't
So
make it any harder.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Two little girls, and I find it so funny. It's so simple, but treat others how you want to be treated. Treat each other how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and we just make it so much harder than it has to be. I don't know what gets in the way, but I mean, even at home, they aren't biologically sisters, but I'm like, you're gonna get along. Treat each other how you want to be treated. It's simple.
So why don't we do this for let's go through some of the slides and read some of the questions for those who are online. I know we only have a few more minutes, but just share some of the stats that they took time to fill out the survey. Let's allow them to hear some of the results. Or
Now, does the survey give you an opportunity to elaborate on why you answered it that way?
Yes, so, yeah, that was the whole premise of this. Each session, we pick a couple of the questions, and I like to dive deep into them. So we have a paper that on here that have highlighted questions, and we have on the strongly agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. So you have something from each category. So it's kind of like what we like to do on each session of use. So we can, it's not our words, we want people to hear from the community, right? What they're saying, the good, the bad, the neutral, try to come up with a game plan. So this one was for, do you feel schools and community members are willing to work together to ensure a healthy community? The strongly agree, the school community work well together, absolutely. Got strong, smart, caring individuals and leadership roles that care about community. I believe they have already proven that. The agree responses, I do feel like there have been steps in the right direction. I just don't want to see indoctrination at the school level of a particular stance, just basic education and teaching kids to respect everyone. I think they are willing to try, but it is the responsibility of the community as a whole to be open to help. I feel schools are willing to work hard as it takes, but I feel the community members push back a lot. I think the people who live in Kearney are willing to work together, not sure the schools and the city officials are though. And the neutral responses, I have no insight on how any of these numbers work together. Is this easily accessible public information? Again, I feel there is a tension between people raised here and people coming in. I've lived in this community for 10 years, have a child in the school district, and feel disconnected often. I'm not really sure what it's a neutral response. But I feel I have seen a lot of viewpoints from community members of the Kearney community page. There are people who are quick to complain, but don't offer any suggestions. And the disagree, healthy community. Questions should be inclusive or friendly community. Bullying, discrimination continues in the schools, probably starts at home. Our school district has not been proactive or willing to listen to parents, students, and community about the drug problem or the bullying issues. No one wants conflict, so people are staying silent and strongly disagree. Schools refuse to work with the community in a healthy way. They talk huge but act very little. We pulled our kids out due to all the politics and the Democrats and the school board. No one cares, respects anyone but themselves. So those are just some of the highlighted ones that we pulled for the responses. Honestly, very wide range.
Yeah. I think the conflict one is a good one. People just don't want to deal with it.
Correct. Yes.
But the platform that was created by Mayor Polk and myself from our initial conversations, it was to me, this is okay. But let's talk about it and let's get to an understanding as to, again, see someone else's perspective so that even if you strongly disagree or say you strongly agree, you can still start having some mutual respect, which strengthens your community. So.
And I will ask too, knowing that the two of you had kids go through and you've been in the community since, what is the difference that you see? Or is there a difference? Or a third question at the same time? How would you have answered this? Do you think that they are? And what can we do if they aren't?
Well, my kids have, it's been a long time. My youngest is 28, so it's been 10 years since she's been out. But if you ask my daughter, who's 43, when she was going through school, it was horrible.
Yeah.
It was awful. You know, and she was 15 when we moved here from Massachusetts, moving here. She came home and said, I go to school with Cowboys. And I went, oh boy. But, you know, it back then, yeah, it was bad. For her, it was bad because she did not feel like she belonged and she didn't belong. I mean, I didn't think she was going to make it through high school, honestly, in Kearney. I mean, I know my husband would have remembered the principal's name at the time because he used to go there a lot. My job brought us, my family here. So I was always going and doing, whereas he played Mr. Mom. And unfortunately, he's not here with us any longer, but he probably would have had more insight as to the different changes that they go through. Now, my youngest, obviously, she's almost 14 years younger than the oldest, and she was in kindergarten when we started here, and so was her brother. Started from kindergarten, went all the way through. You know, the bullying in that was really bad when he was going through. My daughter, my youngest, would probably tell you that it was not as bad as when her sister was going through the school. Things were starting to change a little bit. She got hurt when she was a junior. That's put her into the wheelchair, and it was extremely difficult. But I will say that the school, we met with them a few times over some issues that she was having, and they worked with us so well. It was fabulous. So as far as the community leaders in that, with who we have now, and I think I applaud Mayor Polk for doing this. I went, wow, seriously, it's about time.
Right.
Yeah. We really needed to have something. And you got to start with the kids because you got that mentality of us, the adults, teaching our children.
Right.
We gotta give them a broader perspective out there.
Right.
So I think good things are happening. It's taken way too long.
And understanding that this is not a one size fits all. This is a process.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Mayor Polk and I talked about, you know, building this out over a 3-4 year period because
Yeah.
you do something for a year, okay?
Yeah.
You're not gonna see it takes time, you know. It takes time for certain high school students that we work with that become now adults that are maybe in the city officials to actually have a voice and challenge some of the things that has been historically been perceived okay, whatever that may be. I don't agree, I'm just making that up. But their voices will one day be in leadership roles.
Okay.
They will be principals, they will be teachers, they will be policemen, police persons. You know, in those types of roles. And I think we are locked and loaded to ready to go forward with the community as long as the community wants to go forward with us, because we're a value add to what's trying to be done. We invite others to this conversation because if 273 people have something to say, there should be 273 people in this room talking about the solution of what they say.
Yeah.
Right? So we understand bullying has always been around. It's never gonna go away. Let's just be real. However, the bullying that we experienced growing up is different than what our kids are seeing. When you have my generation, you go out in the backyard, you have a fist fight, it's over. Now you have these things called cell phones. And when does it stop? Your young daughter, all of a sudden, you're asleep. She's just getting pinged and pinged and pinged, and you don't realize how can you protect your son or daughter or granddaughter or grandson from the attacks that happen here? You know, intent and impact. The intent is that this group of friends trying to be funny about another person or whatever, but the impact is now you're dealing with a community suicide. It could have been prevented.
Exactly.
That's the reality.
And the reach of those things.
Yeah. And you have to ask yourself, are you okay being the result of that action? Because it really has down to that. Could have been avoided. Because what we're not happening is that, well, we just spoke about. You know, let's really get to the crux of the intent, and now we're dealing with the impact. That's someone who's no longer here. So we look forward to keep showing up.
Yeah.
You know, we invite the community to, you know, come out. We'll have our next session posted on the dates when we decide on when that next date is. I just think and hope that the voices that want to be heard can be heard.
I hope so. I did. I mean, I've been trying.
Yeah. And that's all you can do. So, any last thoughts, words?
One thing that came to my mind, and I had to smile when we were talking about, you know, teaching the children and, you know, teaching them the way things should be. Well, my daughter teaches me a lot. She constantly harps on me to put on my seatbelt. Daddy, put on your seatbelt. Put on your seatbelt right now, Daddy. So like, but she is responsible for me putting on my seatbelt way more than that. So now it's.
And you know what? Because you think that you have to say, well, we wear seatbelts. Actually, our experience was that you want to spread the color. I know not. But to your point, you know, we learn even as facilitators of a program that we've created from the students that we work with. I mean, we leave enlightened so much by what students are saying. What your 4-year-old daughter's saying. I mean, sometimes we as adults just have to get out of the way and allow students to actually lead versus trying to stop them from leading in whatever direction they choose to go. And then just be a support piece, provide guidance, you know.
I will say that a couple of years ago, Smithville had a group of kids, probably 20, that stood in front of a community group and shared what horrible experiences they were having. There were tears, men were crying. It was so painful. So hearing it from a student, from a child, little kids were in there, and all of them that were there were not white, like the most of the room. And so it stirred up. It was right before, you know, we ended up moving to something outside of, like, we need something bigger than what we can do. Because we don't have the answers. We don't even know what to do. We just know these kids and their parents were having, and one family moved away. They had 5 girls that were mixed race, and they were wonderful people, wonderful athletes. You would think they were having the best experience. They cried in my office daily, one of them. And so just people don't know those things are happening. So I think maybe that's the way to go, is that some of the kids that have went through POAC maybe come speaking with the community meeting might help.
Yeah, as I understand it, it did go through the school system, which is good.
Yeah, and they are very honest
Yeah,
about
the high
that.
school students that go through the program, I mean, they are crying for change.
Yeah.
They want change. They feel like they can't obtain it because they feel like their voice isn't heard. And when we brought, because we knew that we were partnering with the city, we had brought, like, would you, some of the students, like, would you want to come share their story? They were 100% on board. They're like, we want our story to be heard because we feel silence. We feel like people aren't hearing us. So it's only one is a platform to be heard.
I mean, it's just unfortunate. You drop your son or daughter off to school at whether it be middle school, elementary, junior high, or high school, not realizing you just dropped them off into a world of hurt of what you don't even realize, because they may not have the courage to come home and tell you about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also just everybody being able to say, we have issues, and so we can't point fingers. It's not about that. It's more about, here they are. Let's just even start with this. What is one thing we can start doing?
Definitely.
Yes. So maybe starting with that, but just feeling like, I mean, the goal tonight was to kind of look at this and then choose which one would you like to try to do something about, and who would be responsible? Would we need a certain leader that we need to get on board with that? Because sometimes the leaders don't really know it's an issue, but if you can get them to start coming and hearing student stories and people's experiences, you can't argue with what's on the paper and what people have said. So
yeah, we thank you guys for allowing us the platform, even large, small, it doesn't matter. And our goal is to continue to show up and be a part of the solution. And I applaud you also, and hope to see you back the next time too. Just keep coming.
I would bring people with